Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we get started this evening, I just wanted to take a moment of silence. I think everybody is aware Joey Fournier passed away tragically a couple of weeks ago. Came from a very well-known family in town. It's obviously a terrible situation, every parent's nightmare. So I would ask you all just to take a moment's silence, remember the Fournier family, and give them your prayers and support. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is approval of the warrant. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the warrant. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, 401. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the October 26th meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved and seconded to approve the motion, to approve the minutes of the meeting of October 26th as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that also passes unanimously. Next item is public participation. Public participation is reserved for anybody who wants to speak to something not otherwise on our agenda. And we do have a, and before I do that, it's just been pointed out to me that I neglected to read the order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general laws, chapter 30A, section 20, in accordance with the governor of Massachusetts order issued on that date. No public attendance will be permitted in person. The public can access this meeting via WebEx technology. Until further notice, the Burlington School Committee will hear public comment virtually only. Meetings are also broadcast live on the Burlington Cable Access TV. For those seeking to join us by WebEx, the meeting number is 2344-837-5198, and the meeting password is Tuesday. I apologize for not reading that initially. Getting back to public participation, if anybody wants to speak on items not otherwise on the agenda, this is the opportunity to do so. We do have a school committee policy of limiting comment to 3 minutes. And I see there is a hand raised. Bob?
Yes, Rachel Small.
Rachel Small.
Glenn. Last year, I was a 4th grade teacher at the remote academy. I would like to convey my wholehearted support for the BEA bargaining team, and I urge the school committee to collaborate with the bargaining team in order to please settle a fair contract. Thank you so much for all of your past support, and thank you in advance for your future support.
Thank you, Rachel. Anybody else for public participation? See anybody, Bob? Okay. Moving on, item 5 in our agenda is informational reports. First item is subcommittee reports. Any subcommittee reports tonight? Carl?
So the townwide DEI committee has met twice since, I think since our last meeting. I think that the last meeting we were going to meet the next night, and then we have met again. And so far it is just kind of feeling our way, figuring out what direction we want to go to, seeing what information we want to get from the town and possibly from the schools, and reaching out to various people. So nothing concrete or solid to report, except that the 5 members of the committee seem great, not to toot my own horn, but a pretty good crew, and I'll keep you guys updated.
Thank you. Any other subcommittee reports?
Okay, I think Beth was running late. Is there anyone here from CPAC who wants to give an update, or I can read the email that came out? No one there?
Yep.
Okay, so just want to make everybody aware that November is CPAC Awareness Month, and November 19th, everyone is encouraged to wear yellow to support CPAC awareness. The Leonard Zakin Bridge will be lit up yellow on 11/20 in support of CPAC awareness. On 11/9, Burlington CPAC hosts an annual basic rights workshop. Attorney Jessica Cohen presented information on evaluation and eligibility. It is well-attended, and good information was shared with participants. Upcoming Burlington CPAC events on Monday, 11/22 at 6:30 p.m., parent chat via website, and then a business meeting will be held on December 7th at 6:30, also planned at a WebEx. Links are available on the burlingtoncpac.org.
Thank you, Catherine. Anybody else for subcommittee reports? Martha?
I have a couple of reports. First, I wanted to just mention that the LPAC had their second meeting last night, which I was able to attend, and it was very inspiring. There were 30 family members or parents or guardians who were there to get involved with the school district. We had local sports teams and the recreation department doing a presentation so that new families would know how to sign their children up for these different activities. We also, and I'm not going to remember everything, there was a presentation by Michelle Artizzoni about how parents can use the Aspen for communications and for grades and those kinds of things. There was some conversation about different cultural traditions and sharing, and it was a really good experience, a lot of good feedback I've seen online since then. So I'm really delighted that we've started this LPAC this year, and Carrie Lamprey is doing a wonderful job organizing the meetings and getting them going. So thank you to everyone who participated. Jennifer Knight was there. A number of our staff people were there. Some were interpreting, some were there who were also newcomers and not native English speakers who were on our staff, and they were very supportive and helpful to the other families who were there. So it was really a nice experience.
Good.
I'm also wanting to report, since our last meeting, I attended the MASC Conference for 2021. That's the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. They were virtual last year, but this year they were both in-person and virtual. And I'm not going to go through all the workshops that I attended, but there really was an overall theme with many workshops that focused on equity, social emotional learning, and recovery. And obviously all of those topics are completely interdependent, and they're elements of what we as a school district are doing. I do think that we're doing a pretty good job. There was nothing brand new that I can bring back, because we are doing these things like our response to intervention, the equity work we're doing, the multi-tiered instruction in social emotional learning, the use of our ESSER funds, those kinds of things we already kind of got started, and hopefully we'll continue to work on those areas. Just another couple of topics that were mentioned was about amplifying and including student voices, how important that is. And I look forward to our student representative and other students sharing with us or sharing with the staff what they need from us for prevention as well as response. That we need to listen to the social emotional concerns so that we're not just responding to crises. Another speaker talked about COVID and the data, a public health expert. The data is showing that the higher vaccination rates in the communities and the schools do result in lower COVID infection and hospitalization rates. That the multiple interventions work best. You know, the Swiss cheese model, I don't know if you've all seen that. You know, we need masks, we need social distancing, we need to wash hands, we need vaccinations, we need all those different things. The more we have, the fewer infections will be spread. And in particular, a new thing that I think we're doing but wanted to just mention is making sure that the communications we're giving out are in the languages of the homes. It was a suggestion I wanted to make sure we were doing. Another theme that came across was that when doing this equity work, it is true that the personal growth and new awareness for some folks is often uncomfortable, but that's key to moving forward, and I hope that we can all continue to have those difficult conversations and move forward with more equity in our schools. Need both education and support for our staff and for the community. The last thing I want to say is I had sort of two key takeaways from the conference, and I didn't make these up. I got these from people at the conference. But our job is to serve children. That's what we're here on the school committee. That's what our staff are doing. I want to thank everyone for that. And the other is that all means all. All means all of our children that we want to address. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And if there are no other reports,
Sure.
I did want to report that Mrs. Monaco and I are the school committee members who are serving on the bargaining team for contract negotiations with the Burlington Educators Association, the BEA. We are concerned that only partial and sometimes inaccurate information is being shared with the community. Thus, we'd like to share these comments with you tonight. The school committee has spent many hours, and the superintendent and a couple other people have spent many hours engaged in meaningful discussions with the union since last spring. It concerns me to see what the BEA is communicating to the public, stating that we are not holding meaningful discussions. The BEA and the school committee have both proposed changes to the school day and year to better support student learning and staff development. We don't understand why they are saying that we are not. In addition to conversation, we have offered proposals and counter-proposals. The union has offered proposals and a few counter-proposals. That is what negotiations are. While we do not want to bargain in public, we wanted to make sure that complete information was shared with the community. We have made it clear to the BEA members that we understand how hard they are working and how much we respect them. If nothing else, this is evidenced by our pay offers. We are adjusting for the pandemic as we proceed through the school year, but we can't negotiate a contract for the future based on the conditions of the pandemic that will tie our hands after the pandemic is over. As I've said in other school committee meetings, the pandemic is not over, but I do believe that it will be at some point. I would like to make it clear that in the middle of the main contract negotiations, the school committee and the BEA have reached two agreements addressing working conditions during the pandemic, last year and this year. These agreements ensure the safety of students and staff while attempting to maximize student learning. We believe that our teachers are among the best in Massachusetts, and we have made sure that we have paid them accordingly. They have received a raise every year since 1997, except 1 year in 2011 to 2012. Last year, at Dr. Conti's suggestion, and because we, the school committee, wanted to be sure that our teachers received a raise even during the financial uncertainty of spring of 2020, we gave them a 2.5% raise, even though we had no new contract language. This is because we do respect them and we know how hard they are working, especially during the pandemic. Our teachers are in the top 5% of paid teachers in all of Massachusetts. We are proud of this and feel our teachers deserve it. However, we also feel that this is a partnership to make sure that all of our students' educational needs and goals are met. We want high-quality professional development and for teachers to be able to collaborate with their peers and enough time to do it. This is why we want to keep the days we currently have in the school year in order to have time for the staff development that they are asking for without reducing student learning time. Our very favorable salary scale relates to and includes compensation for this 187-day school year for teachers, not for students. Although the union wants to highlight the length of the school year, we are trying to focus on enough time for professional development and teacher collaboration. It is challenging to achieve all of the district's professional development goals and teacher collaboration goals which is why we believe keeping the current length of the school year to be very important. The school committee has a responsibility to support our teachers, and also we have a responsibility to support our students and families. We may not agree that all of their requests are in the best interests of our students or the community, although we know that in general, what is good for teachers is good for the students. We will continue our serious and meaningful negotiations with the Burlington Educators Association.
Christine?
I'd just like to make a few comments to follow up on what Martha said. And she and I are the members of the school committee that do the negotiating, and we are in agreement. We want nothing more than a fair contract. We've been, as Martha said, we've been working very hard, many, many meetings since the late winter, actually, trying to negotiate this contract and the MOAs because of COVID. One of the things that I'm finding somewhat difficult is there has been a lot of negotiating sort of on Facebook or on social media. And at the next meeting with the teachers, our negotiating team, I think it's what, next Tuesday? It doesn't matter, but I think it's next Tuesday. I would like to know how the union leadership feels about all of the posting on Facebook, because a lot of what's being said is inaccurate, and I'm trying to not respond to many things, but it's pretty hard not to respond when something is blatantly inaccurate. For instance, the other day, someone posted on Facebook that our teachers hadn't had a raise since 1997. And I think it's pretty clear that they wouldn't be in the top 5% paid teachers in the state if they hadn't had a raise since then. Someone also posted some details, but said that they couldn't say more because it was all supposed to be, confidential. But the reality is the BEA is free to share all of the details with all of their members. And I just feel that if they're going to be encouraging people to post on social media, that they should probably give them all of the facts instead of just some of the facts. So I would like to discuss that with the group at our next meeting. In closing, I would just like to say that we want a great contract. We want to serve the needs of the students. We need to have enough time on learning. We need to serve the families. We need to serve the teachers. We need to serve the community, and we have to do it the right way. But I don't want anyone to think that we're not working at this. We are. We have made many back and forth proposals, and I hope that we can come to an agreement soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else under subcommittee reports? Seeing none. Ways and Means. I don't know if Roger's here or anybody from Ways and Means, but if so, do you have anything for us right now?
No, nothing on my agenda. Thank you.
Next item is student representative. Is Brooke Hovass. Is she here tonight?
Hi.
Hi, Brooke. What do you got for us?
Basically, we're starting Spirit Week this week for the pep rally. We were gonna start it 2 weeks ago, but then Joey passed away, so we wanted to give a few weeks and have a day to honor him, and then start later on. So we're starting this week, and then we have the pep rally on Wednesday, which is outside because of COVID concerns. That's all that's going on.
Okay, thanks, Brooke. Anybody have any questions or comments for the student rep? Anybody? Martha?
I just want to thank you for your sensitivity after Joey's death, and I really, I'm glad that there was a way for you folks to get together and to remember him. That was very touching. Yeah, thank you all for that.
Thanks, Brooke. All right, next item 6 on the agenda, under the learning category, Marshall Simon's presentation. Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're joined tonight by Principal Carrie Purchase, and as with prior meetings, I think you've heard from Mark Sullivan and some high school folks, and Deb Clark regarding the Burlington Early Childhood Center, and Carrie, Ms. Purchase, is going to be highlighting some goings-on at Marshall Simons Middle School. So, Carrie, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I also have with me Mr. Josh Murphy and Mrs. Chen Fine, who will be presenting alongside me today. So it's really exciting to be here to talk about the, kind of the full return of students. And it really is just so amazing to have all students back. I think that we entered the year and thought, okay, it's going to be, back to normal. And I think as we're all learning that nothing's, kind of back to normal. So we're definitely approaching normal. I think that we are, have made great efforts. And I think that we're still meeting with kids where they are and kind of, living in this new post-pandemic world. We've never taught in a post-pandemic world after students had, over a year of disjointed instruction. And I just have to really commend all members of our community. Our students are doing a great job. Our teachers are doing amazing work. So thank you for having us tonight. Part of the transition back was that 2/3 of our students, our 6th and 7th grade students, had never really experienced what a typical middle school transition was like. They never used their lockers. They didn't change classes last year. They didn't meet in the cafeteria. So this has been, kind of a big transition for them. We returned to our, I'm going to put it in quotes, new schedule, because if you remember in the 1920 school year, we implemented a new schedule, but we never lived that schedule for an entire year before things shut down in March of 2020. So we, there's been just a lot of change. I think some of it very much for the better and the good, and some things that we're working on. This week on Monday, we reopened our cafeterias. And it's honestly been great to see students in, even though it's sometimes a little like, oh my goodness, it's been a long time since we've seen that many kids in one space. But it really is great to see them socializing with each other, talking with each other, and just being kids. And it's kind of like, riding a bike. You're not falling off a bike, riding a bike. Kind of back into the swing of things. So I just want to, to thank folks. On the last 2 weeks, we were very intentional with inviting kids down, showing them their seats, kind of walking through a lunch line. Because again, 2/3 of our students had never bought lunch at a middle school cafeteria, at our cafeteria. So the lunch is going well. It's been 2 days. And our plan is to kind of, go through the next couple of weeks. In early December, we will assess, get some feedback on how things are going in the lunchroom, and then make adjustments, necessary adjustments after the winter break. So right now in 6th and 7th grade, we're sitting by homerooms, so that we still have the ability to contact trace. And our 8th graders, as a privilege, get to choose their seats. So tomorrow they're signing up for their seats for the next month or so, and then, as I said, we'll assess and go forward. So. As I said, this is, we've never taught in a post-pandemic world, and it is, our teachers are doing incredible work with kind of identifying where students are, where their current level of understanding is, and then scaffolding and supporting so that they're able to access grade level standards. I think that is a really important piece of this year, and honestly for the next couple of years, so that we're not kind of perpetuating some of the gaps that exist, that we're continuing to teach grade level content, but we're also meeting kids where they are and supporting them where they are. That's especially true in math and ELA, where our teachers are, using available data through our diagnostic screener, through iReady, and then also through their formative assessments and otherwise to kind of meet kids where they are, identifying both individual needs and then some of the curricular gaps. For example, our ELA teachers are really focusing on writing. That was something that they've noticed, kind of an impact in where students are. So that is their focus moving forward. I have to commend our social studies and science teachers because in the middle of all of this, they've continued to implement the new curriculum frameworks that were adopted in 2016 and 2018 respectfully. And then they are also piloting resources. So in social studies, they piloted resources last year during kind of the remote learning. And then this year they're piloting another resource. So trying to identify a resource that really fits students' needs. And then science is also, last year we had reported that we received a grant for the Open Science Ed, and they are implementing that curriculum, which is a pretty big shift in the way that we're teaching science. And they're teaching 2 new units this year, and then they'll add 2 more units the next year, and then 2 more units the following year. So that is a kind of a slow process, but a really exciting process to see the conversations that are happening in this class around that. In addition, we are in our 3rd year of implementing our language-based learning disability program. We started that 3 years ago in 6th grade. Again, a shout out to our 7th grade teachers who implemented that last year during remote teaching, and then we're continuing to work that. So the students who started as 6th graders 3 years ago are now in 8th grade, and we continue to work and refine that program. I'm going to pass it over to Jen and, Mrs. Chen Fine and Mr. Murphy now to talk a little bit apart from the academic pieces, because that is part of being in a middle school, but it really is the social emotional piece. So we're looking at the whole child, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that they're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've implemented in the, and some of the things that we're excited to have back. So go ahead, Jen.
Thanks, Ms. Purchase. As Carrie said, I'm Jennifer Chen Fine. I'm one of the assistant principals here at Marshall Simons Middle School. I wanted to let everyone know about some of how we're addressing social emotional needs for students, with one of the priorities of our school being to make sure that every student feels a sense of belonging at our school, especially as we transition back from almost 2 years of interrupted learning. We know, and I'm sure parents are seeing at home, that students need that social emotional learning more than ever. So one thing that we have been doing, counselors had changed a few years ago to a model where they loop with students for 3 years, getting to know that grade of students really well from 6th through 8th grade. We are continuing our comprehensive guidance program with them. Our guidance counselors are working with Chrissy Concession, who is one of the directors of mental health at the district level, and they plan to go into classes or advisories with students 3 to 4 times a year for lessons, with most counselors having already done at least one lesson or meeting the students in classes, and other ones coming up soon. The other thing, major social emotional support that we have in place for all students is advisory. So advisory is something that we began as a school last year, and we are continuing. It meets once a week for about 25 minutes on Wednesday, where we have an adjusted school schedule. And it's modeled after a responsive classroom, which is used in our elementary schools. It's here that students, in a ratio of about 1 to 12, 1 teacher to 12 students, spend time fostering a sense of community and getting to know each other, and learning a little bit about our school core values. This year, we were able to use advisory to respond to a few events at our school. One where we needed to talk about what it means to be a community, and students and advisories were able to each make a feather that represented what they thought community meant, and that's being put up as a school mural by our wonderful art teachers in these coming weeks. Right now, we're also having a door decorating contest themed around gratitude, which is going to be judged by some of our central office leadership coming up soon. The last thing I wanted to say about advisory is that in addition to whole school themes, we also have a few themes we focus on by grade. So in sixth grade, we have lessons about communication, self-advocacy, and stress and time management as they kind of enter middle school for the first time. In seventh grade, students have a chance to explore who they are as a learner and what career options they might begin to be interested in. And in eighth grade, we focus on transitioning to high school and the skills they will need beyond middle school and high school. So that is some of the in-school social emotional learning that's happening at MSMS. And I want to introduce Mr. Murphy, who can talk about some of the things happening after school.
Thank you, Mrs. Chen Fine. So I think one of the most exciting things to have back this year is our after-school programming. There's plenty of research out there that shows the importance of after-school programming and how it can promote positive youth development, social, emotional, academic, physical health. It's just it can be a safe and supportive place for our students. We really felt that as a void last school year. Even while we had kids in the building, having the building be eerily quiet at 1:56 when everybody was sort of out of the building was noticeable throughout the year. A few of our teachers were able to run some of their kind of club type activities virtually last year, so it wasn't a total loss necessarily, but we definitely felt the impact. So we're excited to bring back that after school programming, again, to support the social and emotional well-being of our students. And so I just want to run through some of the things that we're doing and kind of categorize them. For students who are looking for a physical activity, we're very proud of our school cross-country team. It is our only sort of school sport. So the Marshall Simons Middle School Junior Devils cross-country team competed very well this year. So we had a number of students, I think it was up over 60 students were competing as part of our cross-country team this year. They had some home meets. They traveled to other towns for some meets. A number of them participated in the state meet recently on a previous Saturday. So it was exciting to have those students there. We also have an intramural program, which is just our in-house students. It's a recreational program, and students are competing in various activities. There's usually 2 or 3 different options each kind of session that students have a choice to participate in. Intramural happens twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we've aligned it with our late bus offering, so students who need transportation home will be able to participate there. And I think I saw, just give a quick shout out to Miss Mirabella, who's on this call, who is the sort of our director, our teacher who is supervising the intramurals program. So she has some other teachers that help out and are sort of coaches for the different sports, but she is sort of directing the operation. So thank you for her efforts. She does a great job. Shifting focus to kind of the academic experiences, we have National History Day taking place this year. That is a project-based activity where students do research on a historical topic and create some form of presentation. Some are writing, some are creating videos, some are creating websites. There is a sort of a competition element to it, and students will present, and there's local, regional, and state and national competitions, and they move along to different levels as they compete and have success. We also have activities like Math Olympiad. We have a coding club. Girls Who Code should be starting up kind of in the later part of the year. We're hoping to realign that with the high school students, and they act as mentors. And we have the robotics team, so we're looking to see where that's going to fit in as well. But right now we have a number of students. I want to speak a little bit about the coding club because I think I see the other advisor here as well. Miss Marcus is on the call as well, and has done just a fantastic job expanding the access to the students there, and had last year that was one of the clubs that was just busting at the seams that kids were participating in, and she went above and beyond and kept sort of adding sections and adding and devoting her time to supporting our kids' love for computer science, and specifically some of the some of our young ladies who we typically don't see the high numbers and high interest as we progress through older ages. So the work that she's doing now with our middle school girls, I'm really hopeful to see the impact that's going to have in future years at the high school. Some of our long-standing activities are back, like student council, the school newspaper, the eighth grade yearbook, photography club, all those that are more kind of socially based. Those are all back. We're excited to have them. We're adding a game club, so we're looking to get that organized in the upcoming weeks as well. So I think what I'm very excited about for a club like that is it's not for kids who are necessarily athletics is their thing. So it's the kids who aren't all into sports or aren't into competition or aren't into music, and they just want to play Dungeons and Dragons or play other games and be social and find those other kids that are like them. So we're really excited to add that club because we really haven't had something for students in that interest area. And for our music students, we've been having the chamber orchestra. So for some of our strings students, they have had an opportunity to be after school, and we are right now working on the details for opportunities for a select chorus and I believe it was jazz band that we are working on getting those details out. So we're very thankful for all the support that the school committee and Dr. Conti has been able to fund a lot of these activities, because without your support and without that funding, a lot of these opportunities wouldn't be there. So lastly, I want to quickly talk about some of the affinity groups that we are able to offer for our students. These affinity groups are safe spaces, and I'll just sort of read a bit here for those who aren't as familiar, but they're safe spaces where everybody in that group shares a particular identity. This identity can be based on race, gender, sexual orientation, language, nationality, physical, mental ability, socioeconomic class, family structure, religion, etc. So there's all sorts of different reasons why an affinity group might be created. So some of the ones that we have a spectrum club that has been running for a number of years now, which sort of fits within that scope. We are offering an Asian Heritage group this year that has been up and running, and we are working on getting a Black and Latinx club going hopefully in the upcoming weeks and months. Lastly, we have a partnership with the leading Equity Center, and they are offering an exciting group called the Advocacy Room. The Advocacy Room empowers our students of any identity to self-advocate, become co-conspirators, and social justice leaders. So I will stop talking because I felt like I talked a lot there, but it's just I'm excited by all the different opportunities we have, because it's not just for kids who are kind of the overachievers academically or the jocks. We're really trying to find different things to get kids engaged in, and it's an exciting time. Thank you.
Thank you. I think just to add on to that too, we are excited to bring back some of our kind of funner, or more fun, I guess would be the more appropriate way to say it, events. So next Wednesday, the day before the Thanksgiving break, our 8th grade students will have an assembly in the gym with masks, but a fun day, and we're excited to get back some of the traditional kind of activities that have marked kind of the transition through middle school. So we're excited by that. So I think that as we just in closing and looking ahead, and I think that this is the hard part, is because everyone is everyone is really working extremely hard and getting back to kind of the swing of things. And we need to continue to look into the future and see where we're at. So there's been some comments in previous school committee meetings, and certainly something that was in the process before the March 2020 shutdown was assessing our schedule change. We went through, again, a significant schedule change in a short amount of time. That really looked at the structure of the school day. So previously we had 9 different schedules in the building. It was really hard to efficiently use some of our resources. So there were some changes that needed to be made to the structure in a pretty short amount of time. And there was a process, and there was input from our teachers and from the community around that. So it wasn't just a waving of the wand. There was a process. And one of the things that we did within that was we maintained all programming. That was one of the kind of our non-negotiables as we went into that is we didn't want to change programming, although there were some adjustments made to the programming. Things like world language went from meeting 4 out of 5 days a week, and then in 7th and 8th grade to 3 out of a 6-day cycle. So that's had an impact. The rotation of some of our allied arts classes or exploratory classes. And then there's been some conversation about potentially adding wind blocks and what that looks like. So we are at a point now, again, which is it's hard to do because we still haven't lived this schedule for a whole year, is that we need to slow down a little bit and start to have a conversation around programming. And really, what is our vision for middle school programming? What kind of experiences do we want our students to have? And then how do we make that happen? And I think that the hard part is that we're not just able to add things onto the school day. We can't just say like, oh, it'd be great to add another 54-minute period on. So we have a finite amount of time that we're going to need to make some decisions around. So we are in the process of looking at developing a process to make sure that there is input from all stakeholders. And I'm taking a step back and saying, what do we want our middle school program of studies to be? And then how do we get there in terms of implementing changes? So we will, as we did prior to the pandemic, we will use a subcommittee of our school council to lead some of these conversations. It'll be a representative group. It'll have a regular education teacher, a special education teacher. It'll have a representative from CPAC. It'll have a school council family member. We are going to invite, and we've invited a world language teacher to be part of that group because we are currently doing a kind of an abbreviated curriculum review to kind of make some decisions around and some recommendations around what world language studies should look like at the middle school level. And then we'll also have a representative from our allied arts department kind of come in because these are things that, again, we can't just add on to our school day, but we're going to need to have some conversations. And while changes happened very quickly that first year when Mr. Murphy and I were here, we feel like we need to slow things down a little bit, take a step back, give everybody some breathing room, but then really kind of think more aspirationally of what we want and then build a plan to get there. So that is, coming in, and I'm sure we'll be giving you updates along the way. And again, it really is meant to be a process that is representative and where people will have opportunities for input. I think that the other thing that is coming your way, and I'm actually very excited about, is we've been working with Mrs. Bookmohan from Pine Glen, Ms. Vino, and Ms. Bellio, our team chairs at the middle school, and Mrs. Ciccolini, the director of special education, and really starting to discuss and starting to plan some changes to a special education programming to accommodate the needs of students. So the DSC, which is at Pine Glen, has been there for a number of years and has developed into actually just an amazing program to meet a wide range of student needs. And we've been in discussions on what that's going to look like at the middle school beginning next year. So I know that Mrs. Ciccolini will be sharing some more information at some point in time, but wanted to put that on your radar. So there's it's great to be back. It's great to be in the moment and supporting students where they're at. And it's also exciting to start looking into the future and planning some of that work. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I really appreciate this opportunity to come in and share some of the great work that's happening at the middle school.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Questions? Comments? Anybody?
Good job.
Martha?
Me first? Okay. All right. Thank you for that great report. It is really good to hear what's going on. And it's certainly appreciated how you started a new schedule, the close down for the pandemic, you're back, but it's not really back to normal, and how many things you've been able to get going again this year, and that's really encouraging. I'm really glad also that you're continuing to look at the schedule and to look at the programming and to figure out, what is going to be the vision in the future for the middle school. So I'm reassured that with the three of you at the helm and knowing the staff there, are going to be able to make some good decisions on that. So thank you for all of that. I want to make another comment, but it's a little bit negative, and I don't mean it to take away from any of the really positive things that are going on, but it did come to my attention that there was some anti-Semitic vandalism at the middle school that was discovered this week. And I know that a letter was sent out from you folks to the families of the middle school, and maybe other people haven't seen it, but I really appreciate your response to this kind of act of anti-Semitism and the vandalism. I understand there's no particular perpetrator that's been identified, and it makes it really complex to deal with. But I also feel pretty sure that you folks are going to be addressing the complexity of this issue, that students at Marshall-Simons will have an opportunity to think about the issues that come up when incidents of hate are perpetrated, and that I look forward to our students having the opportunity to have those conversations, to think about how these actions or words affect their friends, and how it's not just a word, it's very hurtful in certain situations. And I really am glad that you are the people running the middle school, because I do have faith that you will be able to do this, and I know Mr. Porch will be involved, and that we're working as a district. We can't necessarily prevent all these things, but we can learn from them and help our students learn, and also to know, for the community to know that we support them, that the people who feel hurt by these different incidents, I know and I'm pretty sure I can speak for the committee, want you to know that we are, our intention is to make things right and to help our students learn how to act as responsible, caring citizens. So I want to thank you for that too, but I just wanted to acknowledge it, and maybe, I don't know if Dr. Conti wanted to say something else. He had his hand up too. But I still want to end on the positive note, where I'm just really glad to have you folks doing all the work you're doing there with the teachers and the students at Marshall-Simons.
Chris?
I think you did a great job with your presentation, and from a personal perspective, I have two granddaughters at the middle school now, a sixth grader and an eighth grader, and they're very happy. I know middle school is a tough time for kids. They go through so much, and not every parent and not every child is happy, but these two particular students are, and I know that you do your very best to deal with all sorts of incidents and issues and problems, and I appreciate all your work. But thank you for the presentation, and keep up the good work.
Dr. Conti?
I'll defer to any other committee members, but I certainly wanted to, Carrie, thank you and your team. Your response, again, to the incident this week was rapid and thorough. So thank you for that. And your leadership will ensure that we avoid these incidences moving forward. So again, thank you. I also wanted to comment to the committee that I know after-school opportunities continue to be a priority for this committee. I think they were a priority several years ago. I hope you can see evidence of that. And again, Carrie, I think that now's your chance to go over my head. And you said there were we have late buses on Tuesday and Thursday, and I think you've been advocating for a late bus on Wednesday. So here's the school committee, and you can advocate away. What?
Monday.
Oh, Monday, there you go.
Monday.
So
Wednesdays are when we have most of our meetings. So I do want to thank the committee for their support to begin with, and just acknowledge today's incident, and just to kind of our immediate steps are, we are going to be talking about with our students tomorrow morning. We are going to be marking the moment and addressing it, and then tomorrow afternoon we're providing faculty an opportunity to come and have input into kind of what the kind of planned responses. Earlier, Mrs. Chen was talking about advisory and how we use that format to kind of address these situations when they come up. And we will likely be using that going forward, but we want to be thoughtful with it. So it's not something that's going to happen, immediately tomorrow, but it is something that we will continue to address. And I think that it's really important that these conversations and these discussions are ongoing, and that we're proactively doing this work and the education around it, and then respond appropriately when incidents do happen. So that's something that we strive for. So in terms of the late bus, we would love, when we in 1920, before the shutdown, we expanded our because we've been expanding our after school programming, we had an increase in ridership, and we had 3 late buses running 3 days a week that prior to the closure. And this year we kind of had a slower ramp up. We have 2 late buses running on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and which really in order to get access to those activities for students who may not be able to get a ride home or otherwise, that means that all of our after school activities are kind of forced into those 2 days. And then that kind of precludes some kids from participating in multiple activities. We are also working on creating an after school English language learner, kind of an extended day, additional class, and other things. So we're hopeful that we could add a 3rd day of late buses, 2 late buses, so that we're able to get more kids involved in more things, both academic and the social emotional.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Respect to that request, Dr. Conti and/or Bob, is that something that could be arranged logistically?
I've just reached out to the bus company today after Mrs. Purchase's request. So we're finding out right now if we have the drivers.
Okay.
So yeah, it is something that we're looking into.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for the middle school team? I want to thank all 3 of you for coming out tonight. Very thorough presentations. It's good to get caught up on what's going on. Sounds like you got a lot of stuff to do on every given day, so we appreciate your efforts, and keep up the good work. And
Our pleasure. Thank you.
thank you very much. Good night. Okay, item 7 under equity. Dr. Conti, equity audit update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just while we're on the topic of equity, Mr. Foss, you mentioned the townwide DEI committee. I believe your chair is Burlington resident Dr. Addison Reed, and what an excellent resource she is for the community, and just outstanding that she's participating in the town DEI committee. So I think we're very fortunate as a community to have her experience and expertise to be on that committee.
She's great. Yep.
So with that, equity audit, I think Mr. Porch is on the call, so I'm trying not to cover everything, but I do want to thank Mr. Porch, Mr. Larkin, and Ms. Kasha for putting together the procurement process. I think we had 6 firms that responded to our RFP. We've gone through all of the proposals. We've scored all of the proposals. Nicole has opened up the price of the proposals, and honestly, we are just finalizing the firm that we would like to move forward with. We are very close to doing that, and then I think once that happens, then I think Mr. Porch can come to the committee to talk about sort of what the process will look like, and if there'll be quarterly reports. And so again, I want to turn it over to Mr. Porch, but I hope you're also hearing in the school reports, when you hear words like belonging, and you're hearing some of the other work that's taking place, please recognize that that is Mr. Porch's influence in terms of working across our school district. So Ray, thanks for joining us tonight, and again, thank you for your work across the district. But again, just a brief equity audit. I know we haven't sort of completed the exact process, but I think we're very far along.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's good to see you folks. And I'm hoping to see you folks tomorrow night too. Like, y'all staying up a little late, I understand, but I expect to see all 5 of y'all in tow tomorrow, okay? Let me start with that. We're excited. I think this process has been one where we've learned quite a bit about how to go about it as a district, which has been interesting. Nicole's been outstanding with guiding us through and making sure we have our I's dotted and T's crossed. She's been fabulous. And as Dr. Conti said, we are right at the at the finish line in terms of getting a firm signed up and selected and ready to go. In terms of next steps, once we complete the process and get this firm going, what I'd like to do is have a quarterly process, and so we'll walk through that once we have the firm signed on, what that looks like, what data we expect to have. And then what we'll be trying to do is sequester subcommittees of folks as we get this quarterly data submitted and make meaning of it, and really be looking at this through the lens of some of, what we're doing as a district in terms of our improvement plan, through what some of our goals are around, our equity statement that we stand with, and really being collaborative and inclusive in our approach as we get the data comes in and we make meaning of it together. My hope is that we can do that with folks that are inside of our school district, as well as some of our families and that are their children are in the school district. That's what our hope is, and that we do that in a targeted kind of focused way. Those are some of the next steps that we have planned, but like Dr. Conti said, we want to tie this off this week. Really, I'm really super excited. As I said before, this is looking like around a 9-month process to do it with fidelity. And we will be giving lots of updates along the way. We will do lots of strategizing against those elements that I just shared. And it really is. It's an exciting time, I think, for us as a district to know where we are in order to understand where we need to go next. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Porch. And are there any questions from the committee? And you'll be getting more details, I think, probably at the December meeting in terms of when those quarterly updates will be, what to expect, and I think it'll take shape once we get the firm on board.
Good.
And again, Mr. Chair, not to overstep, but the next agenda item, it's hard to contain Ray's enthusiasm to an agenda, but he did mention there is a Let's Talk About It session tomorrow night, and Mr. Porch, that is from 7 to 8:30, is that correct?
That is correct. And if I could very quickly, today we had our first information session as we're all, sharing good news, and for our what is our brand new DEI Student Advisory Committee. And I'm really fired up about this as well. We had some incredible high school students today that showed up, some wonderfully conscientious young people who really do want to have a voice and lead in our district. And today was our first information session about the student advisory, the DEI Student Advisory Committee, which you folks will eventually get a chance to spend time with once we get it all formed up. But yes, let's talk about it tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. And as I said, looking forward to you folks all being there with bells on, and participating once again, modeling for our district how important this work is. And I'm super excited about the DEI Student Advisory. And you'll hear more about that as we start to really pull that together.
And just for the committee's information, Ray's been doing some work with MASS, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, in terms of doing some equity work. MASS has a READY project, which is also looking at diversity, equity, inclusion in their own organization across MASS, but then also across school districts in the state. And they heard about these Let's Talk About It sessions, and they're very interested. So we're also going to be having some other fellow DEI workers, some other superintendents and leaders be participating tomorrow night to also see about expanding this format into their own communities. So I just want to recognize Mr. Porch's efforts and his influence, not only in Burlington, but again, across the state in this work. So thank you, Mr. Porch.
Thank you, Ray. Any questions or comments for Mr. Porch, anybody?
I was just going to say, I really enjoyed the last Let's Talk About It meeting.
In order for me to participate, though, tomorrow, I'd have to clone myself because I have 3 meetings going on at the same time. One of them happens to be the Transportation Subcommittee meeting, which conflicts. So I'd love to be there. I will be there in spirit.
Thank you, Catherine. I understand.
All right, thank you, Ray. Thanks for coming over tonight. Moving on, under item 8, culture, relationships, and thriving. Dr. Conti, test and stay update.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a whole lot to report with this. We're sort of in the same holding pattern. As we said, the mask mandate is going to be state required through January 15th. We'll certainly take a look at that again. We do have some schools across the state who are applying for a lift of that restriction if they have the 80%, have met the 80% threshold in regards to vaccines. We are tracking our positive cases carefully. We have opened up cafeterias at the elementary and the middle school level, so we're looking at that. Our neighboring districts who have had their cafeterias open have not seen increased school spread with that. But again, it's something that we're looking at carefully. Obviously, we mentioned at our last meeting, there's been approval for vaccines for children who are between 5 and 11 years old. So we are urging parents to consult with their child's pediatrician regarding the vaccines and making appointments if they agree as a family that that's the appropriate thing for their child. So again, we are trying to keep as many students in school as we possibly can, and we're tracking cases carefully. And I hate to say it, but again, so far we're doing fairly well. And again, hopefully we won't see any increase going into the winter months. And but we're watching it carefully.
Thank you.
Again, the vaccination clinics are still ongoing in the district. Those dates are on our website. We can make sure that we, again, highlight that. Again, if families are looking for opportunities, if they could consult the website, there are clinics at each of our schools on a rotating basis moving forward.
Thank you. Questions or comments on that item? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9 on the agenda, facilities and finance, a BHS standing agenda item.
I'm sorry, if I could,
sure.
under the category of culture and relationships and thriving, I did want to ask Dr. Conti if maybe at the December meeting he could give us a little report. There's been quite a bit of conversation in the newspapers about problems with sports teams in other districts, and I'd just like to have an update on the team and sports culture in Burlington and how we're helping to support our athletes to become, positive role models and such.
Again, Ms. Simon, through the chair, we will certainly do a more thorough conversation at our next meeting, but simply, I do think the athletic director, the high school principal are very clear on my position on this, and that is our locker rooms, our courts, our arenas, our fields, our wrestling rooms are extensions of our classroom. So if there's any behavior that is acceptable in a classroom would be acceptable in those areas, and any behavior that's not would not be. So that's simplified. I think we do have a great group of coaches. I do think they coach character as well as their sports, and I think that's what we look for. And we also stress that does not mean to limit competitiveness, aggressiveness within the rules, and that's not the intention. So you can have all of those things and have character too. And so I think that's again, in a nutshell, I didn't really prepare anything, but we'll prepare something more formal. But I do think that's the message that our coaches are getting, and that's consistent from the high school administration through the coaches.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it was important for the community to hear that because it's kind of scary to read about what has gone on in some other districts, and to know that that's the priority, that's the message, that's what's the clear message from the top and that our coaches are implementing that is really good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, Burlington High School standing agenda item. Bob?
Thank you, through the chair. I know it says BHS standing agenda item, so I'll address that first, but then I just want to give an overview of Burlington as a district. So this standing agenda item with the feasibility study audit, at a previous meeting, I updated the committee that we did get the first draft. What we're waiting on right now is the financial aspect of that, which is really the projection, like the financial projection of what the project will cost. So I don't want to say that I have no news to update. I don't have the financial project projections yet. I have reviewed the draft as submitted. I have talked to engineers. Again, I really can't contest much of what they've assessed. It's really just confirmation to make sure that some of their information is accurate. Again, once we have the financial projections, I think that's really when we have to present to this committee as well. So once I have that, I will share.
Through the chair. Bob, just a question. The cost is obviously important because of the cost of replacing the equipment that needs to be replaced. But does the cost also have an impact on if it's 30% of the assessed value of the property, then that triggers all of the other code updates that need to happen? Is that correct?
It definitely does. So what Dr. Conti just mentioned is that we have a 30-30 rule when it comes to building, especially for government buildings and when it comes to procurement. So 30% of the assessed value of the building or 30% of the total square footage of the building, if we are either repairing, upgrading, replacing, or building that much of it, then the whole entire building needs to be brought up to the current codes. Right now, if we have something that's out of code, we're grandfathered in because we haven't met any of those triggers or any of those limits. That being said, what's going to be presented to us in the feasibility study is really just a cost estimate based on outstanding projects that are available right now, costs that projects are, and wages that are out there. A project this size, we would have to go out to bid, but at least we'll know if we're close to that number of the trigger. So again, we could have a low number, which of course we're hoping for. Probably unrealistic to think that way, but the estimate will give us an idea how close we are to that 30% or the assessed value of the current building.
Do you know what that value is?
Right now, it's at $49 million.
Thank you.
So 16 million and change, give or take, is that 30% number.
Okay. All right, any questions for Bob on the VHS situation? Seeing none, why don't you keep going?
We have a couple of warrant articles that we got approved at town meeting. So first, I want to thank town meeting for that. One is the BHS field renovation. We had our first kickoff meeting with an engineer last week. First kickoff meeting sounds great. Really what we do is we meet an engineer that's going to help us put our specs together. Saying this is a long project. We know that we're looking to do something after the fall season or into June or July of next summer. We knew that we could not meet that demand this summer just due to constraints with construction and getting supplies. Our next meeting is basically to discuss materials and color designs, and we're actually scheduling to meet with some local vendors that supply materials and then scheduling to visit some local fields. So once I have some of those dates, I can share that with administration and the school committee if anybody would like to join or attend and see what turf fields look like. But that's our next step. We are working on the weatherization project, which we got grant funded through the Green Communities Grant in conjunction with the town.
Just, Mr. Chair, Bob, I'm sorry, just to go back to the field, I just want to, we did go to visit Tewksbury High School, and they have a new field house and field complex, so we checked that out a couple weeks ago. And then I'm just wondering, the lead times, are vendors, have you talked with vendors about holding prices? Because my concern would be, you're talking almost a year and a half out. Is that, again, am I thinking about that correctly? Not this summer, but
Yeah.
the following summer?
No, we're thinking about it this summer of '22, so June. So we're talking 6 to 8 months out.
Oh, 6 to 8 months out.
6 months to build, 8 months to be complete. So we want to start building basically June 1st, give or take, and then be done for August 15th.
All right.
That's our goal. So yeah, so we're projecting about 6 to 8 months out. Depends on the vendors that we use. There are some vendors that are stating that they have materials and supplies. There are some vendors that build the materials themselves in-house in the United States. There's some vendors that outsource their products, so then they're dependent on the other vendor to supply them product. We can look at the project one of two ways: sourcing the material and then installation. There are companies that do both, and there are companies that do one or the other. So that's something that we're working with the engineer right now to try to get a feel of where the market best suits Burlington and best suits our price structure that we're looking to be, but also to make sure that we can meet a timeline that we would like. So I think we'll have more information again once we kind of build the specs, but also really once we go out to bid and try to figure out who has the materials and who bids on it.
Thanks, Bob.
Excuse me.
Martha?
It's come to my attention that there are some concerns about the disposal of the old field, of plastic that just ends up in landfills or over water supplies. Is there a way we could include in our specs a preference for a company that would dispose responsibly of the old field? Is the RFP already written? No?
Through the chair, so no, the RFP is not written. I did ask this specific question to the engineer. Maybe my ears were ringing, and I thought that since we are going to have a lot of plastic and rubber material that needs to be disposed of, that is definitely something that we want to try to do either as green or as, environmentally friendly as possible. So there are some solutions to that. That's just something that we do have to write into our specs and then try to consider what those solutions would be best for Burlington.
Thank you.
Okay, Bob?
As I mentioned, the weatherization project, we got 4 schools grant funded through the Green Community Act in conjunction with the town. We also had town meeting fund some of the middle school and some of the full high school, just because they were over the cost project that the green communities would fund. We've begun work already and completed the middle school, 90% done with Fox Hill, and we'll be done with Fox Hill by tomorrow, and then we're moving on to Francis Wyman. So I think we'll be in pretty good standing with at least 4 of the buildings, probably before Thanksgiving, and we expect to start on the high school prior to the start of next year, so January 1, we expect to be into the high school, so that project is moving good. Sanitary dispensers is another project that a town meeting funded. We've had a little bit of an issue getting all of them, but we've gotten close to 85 of them. We've been installing in the high school and middle school the past few weeks, so we're moving forward with those. I can't necessarily report back yet on the use of all of that product, meaning we are putting them in. And, again, I can't give a full assessment as to how often they're being used yet, just because, again, they're new in the locations and, we're not necessarily going through a large inventory. But that is something that I can report back at a later meeting. That's all I have for updates right now.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody have any questions for Bob? Alrighty, moving on, Fox Hill School Building Committee.
Great, thanks again. I guess the only thing to report right now is that we have a Fox Hill School Building Committee meeting scheduled for December 7th. So that's at 7 o'clock. It's going to be a WebEx meeting, but also in person here in the school committee for those who can attend. That'll be our second meeting. I did send out invitations already through WebEx and a follow-up email. I just want to confirm, those of you that have received my emails, if you have received both the email and the WebEx, please don't respond. If you're missing one of them, please respond and let me know, because I've tried 2 ways to get in touch with you, and I think I have your correct information. So Besides that, the only other thing we're waiting on is the enrollment study. We have a meeting, myself, I think Dr. Conti, a few other committee members with MSBA on November 30th. So we'll be able to give an update to that probably at the meeting, or unless there is more information that we have to give the school, to the MSBA. So we'll give an update on that once we have more information.
Thank you, Bob. Chris?
Bobby, did you say it would be both WebEx and in person?
WebEx and in person for members. So we're not opening it up to the public, but similar to what we do with the school committee
With
meeting.
these meetings, okay.
Members
so
can
you-
attend here in the school committee room, and we can socially distance. But it'll be WebEx for anybody who can't attend in person and any other non-members.
Okay, but the last meeting was all WebEx, right?
The last meeting, we met here as well, too. And we did the same WebEx, similar to a school committee meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. School lunch update. Who's doing that?
I will take this
Bob?
one.
All right.
As Ms. Purchase mentioned earlier tonight, the middle school is using the cafeteria. Our elementary schools are all using the cafeterias as well. Since it is new, same, I don't have much information to report, except kids are excited. We do have a lot of students, especially in younger grades, that it is their first time as well going into cafeterias, so we had to do some trial runs prior to get the kids used to walking down, standing in line, sitting in a chair. But again, kids are excited to be in the cafeteria. Obviously, we are looking to use less products now that we're able to serve on a tray as opposed to packaging materials. That is definitely where we'll see a reduction in waste. And then as far as food, same exact thing. We're still offering the same food, and we want the kids to take it. Obviously, kids have the choice to not take something if they choose to. So again, I think we will see a reduction in our overall food usage, but that's not our intent, is that we want to provide the food to the children that want it. So again, as more information comes available, I'll share.
Thank you, Bob. Questions or comments?
Bob, any response from I know the cafeteria workers were working incredibly hard to get lunches around to the classrooms. I know they're working just as hard now to have the students in the cafeteria, but they're not delivering. Are the working conditions improved, I guess, I don't know how else to ask, but.
I think just the change alone is a benefit to them all. I think also with change, there needs a little bit of time to adjustment, just like was mentioned earlier. You don't forget how to ride a bike. I think they all know how to do their jobs, so they're all doing it well, but it's a learning curve because we haven't done it this way in a while. But I think not delivering foods to the classrooms is very welcome to all the cafeteria members. And I think once we get another week or two behind us, I think a lot of tensions will settle down a little bit and we can get back to semi-normal.
Just trying to get my calendar straight here. Just, could you clarify, the Fox Hill Building Committee meeting is
December 7th.
December 7th, that's at 7 o'clock.
Correct.
And when's the MBSA meeting? That's the 30th?
I will double check and confirm with you.
Is that during the afternoon? Morning?
Sorry, I didn't have my calendar available right now, but give me a second.
That's all right. You could just send me a note.
It is at 1 p.m.
1 p.m.?
Yep. That is a virtual meeting, and that is on November 30th.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Who's supposed to go to that?
I'm going to be there, but
Currently, right now, it's just myself, Tom, Dr. Conti,
Okay.
and then MSBA representatives.
Perfect.
for you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving along. Item E, lab lease. Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nicole's going to present some details or answer any questions you have. But in your packet was a 3-year lease commencing on August 1 of 2021 and terminating on July 21st of 2024. Again, unless subject to the written approval of both parties. And again, I'm going to recommend that the school committee vote to approve the lab lease commencing, this is just for the office space that is in Burlington High School. The lab lease commencing on August 1st, 2021, and terminating on July 31st, 2024. So we would need, again, a motion on this, and again, Nicole is available to answer details. Nicole, did you have anything to say ahead of that?
No, I think you pretty much covered every detail. I think the only thing is there's a 3% rent escalation clause year over year, which is the same as the prior lease. So the only thing that's really changed is the dates.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Do you have any questions about the lease? Martha?
It looks fine, and I'm not a lawyer, but I did notice that the group, the organization that is being rented to is referred throughout the contract as a lessee, and the district is referred to as the school. And I spoke with Ms. Kasha about this, that 3 years ago when we first wrote this contract, we checked with the lawyers. I would really appreciate another check with the lawyers because it just seems like it ought to be the district or the school district because, who the heck is the school? It just doesn't sound like a legal entity to me. So if you could check with the legal people again, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? So you're looking for a vote this evening on the lease?
Nicole, we need a vote, correct?
Correct.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the proposed lease agreement between the lab and the school, Town of Burlington School Department, as submitted in our backup.
I'd like to make that motion pending a response from our legal people about the terms in the contract.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Next item, fiscal 22 revolving fund summary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Nicole will do the revolving fund account. Just for the committee's edification, your typical monthly financial report, it really doesn't make sense for us to do much in operating beyond this until we have a settlement on the teacher's contract, because the expenses are just going to be kind of out of whack for a while. So we're obviously tracking that carefully. It's still early in the fiscal year, but we wanted to present as much information as we felt we had at this point. So Nicole, do you want to talk through the revolving fund summary?
Sure, through the chair.
Sure.
So in terms of the revolving fund summary that you have before you, I think the only account that really needs addressing here is Sprouts Daycare. That's the only one that currently has a deficit balance of about $6,000. I have spoke with Donna Sullivan, and there are some families that are on direct pays that we're just waiting on checks for. So no concerns really at this time.
Do you have any questions on the revolving fund?
I see that the school lunch fund is still in the black, which is great. I also know that they are typically a couple of months behind in their payments from wherever we get the payments from, state or federal or both. And I know that we used some funds from previous times to make sure that we didn't run out. And I know that we are hoping that our expenses in the lunchrooms will go down now that we have all the students back in the cafeterias. We hope to keep it that way. So we'll have fewer expenses on the wrapping supplies and the duplicate food that doesn't get eaten, things like that. And if you could just address how you envision this going forward, if you feel it's sustainable.
Through the chair.
Sure, go ahead, Nicole.
So in terms of school lunch, I think that at the start of the school year, we have a lot of our expenses are sort of front loaded as they're starting the year. And then also for this school year, we're still not allowed to sell a la carte items. So like an additional snack and all of that stuff, which is typically where
we would make most of revenue that would help offset the other expenses. So unfortunately, that's still not an option this year. So in terms of that, I think that's something that we need to be cautious of. But we'll continue to maintain oversight of the school lunch account and see how participation is going and any ways that we can adjust to keep us in the black.
Thank you. And also, can you just confirm or explain this? I know last year all students were eligible for free lunch, and is that still in effect?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. And I hope our families who are listening know that that's still an option. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks, Nicole.
Want to ask Roger?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Roger, do you have any questions, comments with respect to the revolving account?
No, I don't. I mean, it continues to be an area of concern, but not much I can do from here, so.
I'm sorry. Oh, the cafeteria. Okay, I didn't know which area. Thank you.
Okay, item G, returning to public in-person meetings. This is on our agenda for discussion this evening. Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is, again, it's really for a school committee discussion. I think that there was a comment made at the last meeting that many of the other boards in town are open for in-person meeting, and some are for in-person and remote simultaneously. Mr. Chair, I believe you gave the committee sort of homework over between meetings to think about how they wanted to move forward, and Bob and I feel we can sort of accommodate with some mitigation sort of in the room in terms of requiring masks and doing some other things. So it's really up to the school committee. I don't think anything, I think the governor's policy would allow you to remain as we are now. I do think, I would say that we've had more participation than in any of the years that we've been doing this together with the remote access. So even if you allow in-person participation, I do think keeping the remote would help maintain more participation, and I think that would be a positive thing. So, so again, it's really up to the committee. We can make it work. I'm looking at Bob saying we can make it work. That's a pronoun usage that, Bob, you can make it work?
It's the royal we.
Yes, we can make it work. I would just ask a little help trying to be attendant / videographer / WebEx manager / I think we'll do a good job. I think, if the attendance is relatively low and stable and everyone is following rules, and we'll play catch up with the video, but I think we'll do okay.
I know with some of the other committees that have gone back to in-person attendance, at least one that I can think of, they still do the remote via WebEx. People can tune into via WebEx. However, they make a point of saying that since it's an open public meeting, if there are any issues with the WebEx connection or things of that nature, that doesn't negate the meeting, or there won't be any delay in the meeting while that gets fixed. Where I don't think that was the case when that's the only way of doing it. So I guess my point is that even if we choose if we do choose to come bring people into the building, and we continue with a WebEx feed, I think it probably should be on the condition that if there are any issues with the WebEx feed for whatever reason, then as a committee, we'll just continue with the public meeting with anybody who happens to be inside, and that won't be cause for delaying or postponing the meeting. But having said that, and, you know, I think we've probably all got some feedback or input from people. I would agree that we're kind of at the point now where we should be trying to get, at least making available the option of people attending the meeting in person. I think it's just, you know, that's the way it's been forever until the last year and a half came and went, so I think we have to work back towards that, but that's just my 2 cents. Are there any comments or discussion on this particular matter? Chris?
I would agree with everything Mr. Murphy just said. I think it's time, and I would like to see our meetings go back to normal.
Again, through the chair, normal, but with masks.
Of course, with masks.
One question, Mr. Chair.
Carol?
Thank you. I guess my question is, are we going to leave the WebEx, even if things all go back completely normal, are we, and again, we're using the we, is Bob going to, Mr. Kuna going to be able to keep the WebEx? I think it is important to keep that on forever. I think it's great, as everyone has pointed out, it increases participation. I don't think that we should ever get rid of it, but I do agree that we should open the doors, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and I agree. That's certainly, we've always been on BCAT, so you can assume there are some people at home listening, but obviously they can't participate.
Right, but I guess, so that brings up a second point, sorry to jump back in. You're right, they could always watch on BCAT, but the public participation isn't there. Would the public still be able to participate through WebEx? I think that's important.
Yeah, I think that's something we should certainly discuss. I don't have a problem with it from a logistical standpoint.
Right.
That's a different story. If somebody tells me that it's difficult to the point where it's distracting, I guess we'll talk about it. But if not, I don't see any reason why not to.
Great.
Mr. Foss, I think we can do it.
Hey, Bob, when did you change your name?
Bob?
My one question would be, and I don't know if we need to decide that tonight, would there be a capacity limit to attendees?
That was one of the questions I had too, is we should probably define how many people are allowed in the room.
Yeah, if, I don't know how you do the math on that one, but if you want to, under current guidelines, figure out, what our capacity is here and what percentage of that we're allowed to put people in, and then we'll just have to post it.
Are there any guidelines?
Huh?
Can we set them
have-
ourselves?
Yeah, I would assume so. What's social distancing now, 3 feet? Yeah.
3 feet?
Okay.
Is that chair to chair, head to head, elbow to elbow?
Usually head to head.
Okay, head to head, 3 feet.
We can set the chairs up and count.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if the question, I think the answer to the question probably should be that it's going to be subject potentially to restrictions based on, whatever number you come up with.
Okay.
Historically, I can't think of a lot of times over the past however many years that we've had a full room. It happens on occasion. But I think we should be obviously complying with whatever our local guidelines and local restrictions are. So whatever that number is, we'll just have to post it accordingly.
Just in response, we typically have about 38 capacity for the chair space once we set up tables, and then we have either a visitor or guest table as well to comment on. So rough capacity would put us at anywhere between like 18 and 24
Okay.
if we wanted to try to use every square inch of available space.
Okay.
So.
And Mr. Chair, we can put the limit, that number on the agenda that we post too, so we can say we have in-person capacity to, say, 20, and then after that, participation can be on WebEx as has been happening.
So if there's no empty chair, there's no room.
Well, it wouldn't be based on an empty
Just
chair, but a
heads.
space.
Yeah. Mrs. Monaco can be the bouncer.
Yeah. Carl's going
Martha.
to do that.
So we've just had a general conversation with a number of specifics that we seem to be all in agreement with, and I am in agreement with having it with some capacity with the 3 feet distancing, with the masking, with the ability to have WebEx as well. And I'd like to add to that, that if the COVID situation were to change, that we would have to reconsider whether these limits would still be appropriate, or if we felt we needed to restrict more or become less restrictive. And I don't know that we need to have a vote, but I just sort of repeated, and so I want to make sure we're all on the same page as these are the things that we're restricting. Maybe we should put them in writing. Dr. Conti, I'm looking at you, if you could put in writing what we've agreed to, so that it's clear, so somebody doesn't, I don't know, show up and say, well, nobody told me that, such and such. And I just wanted to be clear for the public to know, because I want the public to be able to come back in person, and for us all to be safe as well.
And I want to say that I'd like to add to it, not just the public participation of, community members, but I'd like to see people who are doing their presentations to come live instead of it all being over WebEx. I just think that we get to know each other a lot better, and it leaves things, I'd like to see people in person as much as possible, just to get to know people a little bit better.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so I'm not sure we ever voted to make it non-public. I'm not sure we have to vote to reopen it, but I think it seems certainly the will of the committee that, starting with our next meeting, which is in December, the public will be welcome at our meetings with the restrictions that we've discussed. We ask the public to be patient with us as we work through that, because, if it's a 20-person limit, to use Bob's number, and 26 people show up, that means 6 people are not going to be able to be seated, and we just don't want any problems. So we hope we can all work together and be reasonable and make this work. So that'll be the plan. Dr. Conti, if maybe you want to just send out a memo just kind of outlining the things we discussed, and we can post it in the window or whatever on meeting nights. That's fine too. Anybody else have any questions or comments with respect to that item?
And again, the seating would need to be, we'd have to have people sign in with numbered seats, just in case there is a positive. We would need to do some contact tracing for the Board of Health. So
Okay.
I think it'll be great to have people back, but we'll just have to make sure that we're accompanying. So we can number the seats, Bob, and have people sign in to
Okay.
a number and then stick to that seat. And then,
Yep.
if for some reason there's a positive, we can, again, I don't believe we would be close contacts if you're vaccinated in masks, but again, the Board of Health may want to know who is seated where.
Okay.
And we'll check with Ms. Luminello as well, just to make sure we're following everything we need to.
Okay.
So we'll write that up.
Thank you. All right. Is there anything else that anybody wants to bring forward in public session this evening? We do have need for an executive session.
I'm sorry, I have my hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
Is it Beth? Sounds like Beth.
Hi, everyone. Sorry.
Beth Colburn. I just wanted to make a possible suggestion for your hybrid in-person situation. What if you almost like a Facebook Evite where you're like, hey, 20 people can come, and then you can kind of RSVP. I especially just thought of that because if you have presenters coming who might take up space, then that reduces the number of in-person people you can have. And I'm mostly thinking of myself because I'm frequently attending in person, and I'm thinking, oh, well, what if I want to speak that day and I have to run home because I couldn't get a chair? Just something to think about. Okay.
Thanks, Beth.
I mean, like anything else, it's a logistics thing, but we'll have to, this might be,
Absolutely.
let's-
I'm sure it probably won't be an issue.
yeah. Hopefully. Yeah,
But it's a
hopefully
good
not.
point.
Yeah, it is a good point.
Okay. Any other hands out there? No? Okay. All right. We do have need for an executive session this evening under Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21A, subsection 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations. Also for approval of minutes of previous executive sessions. We will return to public session only for purposes of adjournment, and the chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Foss.
Aye.
Ms. Simon.
Aye.
Ms. Monaco.
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 5-0-0.
Catherine.